Hey, everybody, before we get into this podcast, I just want to let you know about our sponsor. It's a film called Sir John A. and the Curse of the Anti-Quench. It's about two brothers that save the town of Kingston by staying drunk to defeat demons. Yep, you heard me correct. It stars John Dunsworth as the voice of Sir John A., Spenny from Kenny vs. Spenny, the Diener from Fubar, and a bunch of other really funny Canadians. You can check it out on iTunes, Amazon, or wherever you get your movies. Check out curseoftheantiquench.com. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. No actual movie we're watching this week, but I do have a special guest on, Eddie Spuhghetti. So you may know Eddie from his recent Hopper PI viral fame. Eddie, how are we doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I just got off of the private jet, landed here back in my hometown of Ottawa, Ontario, Canada.
Right.
And it's gloomy as piss out there, but you know, not everywhere can be Beverly Hills.
Ottawa is always gloomy, and it's good that you have the luxury of your private jet to get around in, so you can go to sunnier locations.
Oh yeah, no, it's really handy, especially with the new VCR I got installed on it.
Right.
Comes in handy.
It's key. Is there weight restrictions if you have like the tube TV on the plane? You know, you have extra weight. Technically, they weigh a couple 100 pounds.
I don't know. I'm not the pilot, so
right.
I just tell them where to go.
Fair. So yeah, talk to us about Hopper PI. Where like obviously it blew up online and it's gotten tons of views. David Harbour's like reposting it and retweeting it or all the whatevers, and people are writing articles about it. It's getting posted, sometimes not tagging you, but whatever.
Yeah, that was awesome. I had a lot of people point that out to me. Actually, they were like, hey, I think initially Will Harbour, when he reposted it, he tagged the wrong person who had a similar name to mine. And he did actually go fix it afterwards, so I'll give him that. But no, it initially, I mean, I had only gotten into Stranger Things season 3, I think about like 4 episodes worth. I don't know, something like that. I didn't finish it. So when I made the video, I hadn't finished watching the series entirely. So I only used portions of some of the episodes. Okay. Not all of them though.
Okay. So
there's like a lot of, like I had a lot of people comment and say like, oh, you know, why didn't you use this and use that? And really the truth is I hadn't finished that season.
You didn't want to get anything spoiled.
No. And I worried about that too. I mean, that's, you know, for me personally, like I used to work in a movie theater. So I got accustomed to seeing the end of a lot of films, and it's basically changed my perception of when I watch movies. Like I don't really get spoiled. If anything, the spoilers get me more interested in knowing how they get to that point. It's a really weird thing. Not a whole lot of people are like that. I feel like mainly it's people who are either, you know, they're cinephiles and they worked in a movie theater, or they're just freaks somehow. I don't know. But
you think about like back in the day, like before Psycho, the movie would just play sort of continually, and you could walk in whenever you want and walk out. But like Psycho was the first movie where Hitchcock was like, no, you buy a ticket at the start, you leave at the end, shut the fuck up on the way out, and you know, don't tell anybody about the ending. And that was like a big twist, like, oh no, it's that guy, right?
Yeah. And then it was weird too, because it was like, well, what if somebody does that? Like, was Hitchcock going to show up and be like, you know, get out of the theater,
right? Like he's actually at everyone.
he's watching from the back, just watching
scaring
everybody come in,
throwing fake birds at you.
Yes, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, so where'd the idea come to make the Hopper PI video? Obviously, you've made a lot of other sort of fan videos. I know you made the Glow video a while back, and that got some traction. And but we can talk about the Glow video after. But where'd the I guess the impetus come of the Hopper PI video?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, I hadn't finished watching the entire season, but I think it was like either the first episode or one of the second one. There's a shot where the character of Hopper is watching Magnum PI on a television set, and when I was watching it, and it might have been later when he eventually gets a Hawaiian t-shirt that he wears, but I just kind of said out loud, I was watching it with my partner, Dora Bones, and I was like, somebody should do like a fake Magnum PI intro with his character and like use shots from this. And she was like, yeah, you should do it. And I was thining about it. I was like, yeah, you're right. Like I should do it. I totally would know how to do it. So I basically kind of spent like the good portion of a night finding, you know, the footage and that sort of stuff and getting it together and putting it together. And then I came out with Hopper PI and initially just released it on a bunch of different kind of platforms. Like, you know, I put it on Twitter and Instagram and so on. And it received a good amount of response at first, and then it really received a lot of traction once Harbor himself reposted it.
Right.
Despite the fact that he didn't tag the correct account, but he later rectified that. That's fine.
Fair.
You know, no, Po Buddy's perfect. But it was really cool to get a lot of reception. A lot of people too were really surprised by it because my style of editing, on my series Here Lies, which we can talk about in a bit, but I do all my videos in 480 aspect ratio. So they're basically your full frame, old TV set style thing. There's nothing HD about them. They'll load on the shittiest internet connection possible so you can enjoy them. But I record all mine to tape and I redigitize it. So I don't use any fake filters. I've tested fake filters in the past. I tested using, you know, different coloring methods and you know, distortion or whatever like that. But I eventually figured, you know what, if I'm going to do it, let's like legit do it.
Yeah, there's an authenticity to it. I mean, I've definitely used all those filters too in the past, and you can get a really cool look from it in the computer. But
well, they're both different though. That's the thing. Is like, it's not like they're both the same thing. So I feel like nowadays, like your VHS filter that shows up most of the time, where you have the scan lines, you have like the distortion, you have like the weird ghosting of the image, the discoloration, like it's become its own effect. It's like VHS 2010. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then what I do, mine is a lot more subtle because it's not on a very highly degraded tape. I'm not running it through numerous times. If you run it through numerous times, it would get a lot more degraded looking. And if I had a shittier tape to use, then definitely it would look more apropos to what people think now is the VHS style. But my stuff is a lot more subtle, but it's there. And, you know, there's color degradation. There's some distortion in the image and that sort of stuff. But I legit record the finished take essentially to a tape and then record it back to my computer essentially. So I had a lot of people who were really interested in that, and they were like, what filter did you use? Like, did you use this and that? And I just responded back and say, listen, I didn't use any filter. Like, that's what you're watching is the recording
VHS.
of a tape. Yeah.
That's awesome though. Cause like, like you said though, like the actual VHS look wasn't always terrible. When you bought a brand new VHS, it looked great.
Yeah.
Well, for the time. For 1993, when you got a VHS, it was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, over time, people like that's the interesting thing about VHS and versus Betamax, because as you know, I'm a really big fan of Betamax over VHS, despite the fact that I prominently work with VHS because Betamax isn't as common enough. But that's the cool thing about the comparison between the two is like over the years, you know, if you compared a tape of Jurassic Park on VHS versus Jurassic Park on Beta, chances are the Beta copy is going to be a lot more pristine because how many times would have somebody watched that? They would have maybe watched it like twice and then that was it. Whereas the Jurassic Park tape, they probably watched it like 50 times from when it came out to this point in time. So that tape is going to be a lot more wear and tear, and you're going to see a lot more of that like degradation and you know, scan lines and etc., like all that distortion. So that's where I feel like most people nowadays, they associate that VHS kind of look and style because of the fact that they've been watching their tapes that they've had for over like 20 years now that have just become crappy,
degraded, you know? In a way.
Yeah.
I know we were talking a while back about how some of the effects used to look better on VHS because you could hide in some of that grain and some of that grossness, and now like your effects have to be really, really good to get away with some of the gore. Or I know we were watching Hellraiser, and like some of the effects are pretty good for the time, and on Beta they look pretty great. But if you saw that HD transfer now, like that would probably look like garbage, you know?
Yeah, there was actually a really cool kind of little reminder about that sort of stuff in comparisons to old technology versus new with VHS and Blu-ray. There is a friend of mine, his name's Lee DeMarbre. He's a film director. He directed Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter.
Right.
And at one time we were having lunch or something, and we were talking about Blu-ray versus VHS and Laserdisc, because I was a really big Laserdisc aficionado at the time. And he knew that, and I think he gave me a few, actually. But we were talking about it, and he said, the biggest thing about Blu-ray is that, like, it's high definition, it's high quality, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's needed for certain films. And he said, by example, like, there's a movie, I think it's called Porno Holocaust, and it's a film about a zombie on an island, on a Caribbean island. It's primarily a porn film with horror elements to it. And apparently in the Blu-ray version, you can see really defining features of people's genital warts. And he said, that's kind of what it is. It's like, do you want to have a copy of Porno Holocaust where you can really clearly see the genital warts? Or do you want to have one where you can't really tell what it is?
Yeah, leave it for the imagination.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not like bashing HD or Blu-ray or any of that sort of stuff. Like, it's great. Like, there's some movies that it really holds well to, like I always wanted to see Batman 1989 in like high definition, because I just love the set decoration of that film and the style of it. And it's something like that I would totally want to see in that kind of light. But where it's something more like, I don't know, like Mac and Me or like Porno Holocaust, by example.
Yeah. It's
I don't really need to.
Things though, where it's a look and it's to tell the story, and like sometimes HD is what you need, but I've watched Raiders of the Lost Ark. No, not Raiders. Temple of Doom on old 35mm film, and it's all beat up, it's scratched, but it looks great, and that's the way it was supposed to be seen. It's same as maybe something that went straight to video. It's meant to be shown in that way. So
yeah,
it's all about the story and like what works for that particular film in that format. But interestingly enough, though, like I do like the idea of kind of this reprise, I guess, to VHS, and like VHS was like poo-pooed for so long, and now like we see stuff like you're putting out, and like there's a lot of other this like callback to like this 80s sort of this 80s vibe, this, I don't know, rose tinted glasses remembering the 80s. So we have your Hopper PI thing, and then I know you put out the Glow sort of tape too, which you actually used real content from the original Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. And,
yes,
and you got some like traction with them liking and reposting that video as well, I remember.
Oh yeah, no, I befriended a few of the actual Glow alumni because that video, I put that out I think a year ago actually. And I got a lot of positive comments about it. It was really initially a video I started off as trying to keep in the tone of the original series, like the actual original Glow, whereas kind of also acknowledging the newer one. Okay. And there was going to be a lot more footage of the newer Netflix series, but then I kind of like really, when I started putting it together, I kind of immediately understood. I was like, no, I shouldn't focus too much about the new one. Like, this needs to be about what that show came from,
right?
What actually got that show to go where it is now.
Which I think some people that watch the Netflix show have almost no idea that it was this whole other thing, So I know like a lot of my friends that watch it, they just see Mark Maron, and they're like, oh cool, I like his podcast, and then they'll like watch that show but have no idea about this whole other world that existed before and that was based on. So yeah, it's really cool how especially in the total aesthetic of this 80s aesthetic resurgence kind of thing, where it's really getting people interested again, with something that's like visually it's totally old and decrepit looking, and in terms of like high quality now, because we're so used to like everything being in high definition, all that sort of stuff, like everywhere you go. So it's really cool that people are kind of like acknowledging, that we had a much simpler and less appealing kind of looking format. Yeah. But now it's become more of a cool cult kind of thing. And exactly.
I don't really think that VHS tape collecting is really ever going to become as big
mainstream.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever going to come mainstream. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of wonderful, lovely people who are in VHS collecting groups. Facebook, check them out. They're great. And they keep that tradition going. Like there's just so many, there's so many thrift stores out there that carry these things. So they're there for you to grab them.
You've like curated some of that. I guess curate is a fancy word, but you've made some great compilation tapes, which I really like. So your Halloween tapes and your Christmas tapes, like I wish you'd make Easter and like Labor Day weekend tapes too.
Geez.
Like I know they're a ton of work because they're 10 hours long, but these nostalgia bombs essentially of a 10-hour tape, you can watch it, digitally, or you can actually have a physical VHS, which I have in my office, right up there.
Oh yeah.
So essentially, you put this in, and it's essentially like you're watching a 10-hour block of television from the late 80s, early 90s area, and watching commercials and different programs on there. And I don't know where that idea came from, but I remember when I heard about it, I was like, this is silly. I don't know about this. But then I put it on, and then 10 hours, almost, or 3-hour block goes by, and you're like, where did that last 3 hours go? Like, I love it. I want to keep watching, what was that commercial? Oh, I remember that commercial. So I don't know if you want to talk about that and where that came from, that idea, or like when you started finding all these VHS things and like deciding to put them in a compilation. And
that thing you mentioned though about where you're watching it and you start to recognize certain things and you're kind of thinking, oh, I remember where that was from, or I remember something about this is totally taking me back to something. Like I can remember part of this commercial, and then at the end of it, you're like, oh shit, I remember that commercial.
Yeah.
It's a standard phenomena with those tapes. I've had hundreds of people tell me I forgot about this entirely until I saw it on one of your tapes. Now, to explain the tapes, they initially started as prizes for Halloween parties I used to host. So basically, when I eventually left my parents' humble abode, I decided that I would have like this big, huge Halloween party every year. So I would do like prizes, so like best costumes and best original idea and that sort of stuff, and give candy and go buy a couple of cheap DVDs or something like that, and get rid of some old board games that we had, some things like that. And I initially kind of realized, it's like, what, like I have the means to make a mixtape. I've always wanted to make a mixtape. My dad made mixtapes a lot in the 80s and 90s for us. A lot of kids tapes, most of them taped over with Star Trek Voyager episodes eventually. I go into a little bit of discussion on that on my Garfield's Halloween Adventure episode of Fear Lies, where I discuss that special, but I also discuss like the tapes that my dad made.
Okay.
And like he'd make his own labels, and he would like edit them really specifically, where he would take out commercials.
Oh wow.
And like he would specifically, he could tell how much time he had on a tape. So if he ran out of time to put a full film, he would then instead fill in those gaps with like Twilight Zone episodes.
Oh, that's
like little things
kids,
like that.
Maybe a little much, but
yeah. And for kids, for kids, like usually fast forward through the Twilight Zone stuff. Nowadays, I'm just like, oh, I just want more.
That's all you want.
Yeah. But I was really heavily influenced by that, and I always kind of wanted to make my own. And then when I had this opportunity to do it, I did, and I made the first one, which was not really what you have now and most people have seen. There's a select amount of people out there who do have the original first tape.
Would you do Halloween themed again, or?
Yeah, it was the Halloween one. So it was technically volume 1 of the Halloween one. Because there's two volumes of the Halloween tapes. But it was a very bare bones-ish kind of version. Like there wasn't any commercial breaks put in. There was just like a slate of commercials at one point. And I didn't edit it. I don't know. I kind of just blitzed through it a little bit, and it wasn't a full tape and whatever. Okay. So anyways, I gave that out as a prize for Halloween parties for a little while. Okay. And then I eventually kind of gave a few copies. Like I befriended, this was really early on in my career as a horror writer. So I used to write for horror magazines and websites. I kind of put it on hold for the time being, but maybe one day I will jump back to that. Okay. But I was really getting into that, and I was befriending a lot of bloggers. And they were really into like that aesthetic and like old stuff of horror and whatnot. And I was kind of like, I don't know, I feel like you you could benefit so well from having one of these. So I would tell them like, here, I'll send you a copy of it. And they were like, you should legit like make this public to everybody else. There are people who would go crazy for these things.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. And then eventually I came out with a volume 2 of the Halloween tape, which was actually like the proper kind of edit style. So in that, so you're getting essentially a 6-hour long tape. So I essentially used up the amount of the total amount that you can of one of those, your standard
The long play.
Yeah. The long play tapes. Yeah. Essentially used up as much, time as I could on them. And you're getting old television specials, episodes of TV shows that are Halloween themed. There's actually a full film on each of the tapes in the middle of the tape, but everything has commercial breaks, and not just like there is random stuff. Like it's all connected to Halloween. So it's all like monster stuff, or, there's one of the tapes has like a bunch of like Cousins sub commercials with Vincent Price, because he's Vincent Price.
Yeah.
So little random stuff like that that's kind of connected to Halloween and horror. But everything has like a proper break, and it has its own proper bumpers. So, if you're watching,
it's really well put together. Like you'd swear you just taped a straight up 3-hour block of real TV, but it's all customized, put in order by you.
And that was the idea, was that I want to give someone the idea, the style and the atmosphere of 6 hours worth of television that they're watching from at some point in the 80s or 90s. I think my content usually goes from about 76 to 1996. So I don't generally go and grab stuff, commercials, video episodes, whatever. Anything before that or past that. There are some exceptions, like the Christmas tape has Charlie Brown's Christmas, which is like from the 60s.
Right. But it's something that was on a lot during that era, you know?
It transcends that a bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I totally get that. But like, they've like been in like people like restaurants and bars buy them, put them up as content. We'll put them on parties, and at Christmas sometimes we'll put on the Christmas tapes and just watch them, just because it's like a new thing. Like it's become a tradition now to put on the tapes.
Yeah, I've had that from a lot of people. They told me that it's now their family tradition. They love it, especially they have children. They watch it with their kids, and their kids are like, "What is this? What is that? Like, why were microwaves $800 at one point in the past?"
You can go to like Walmart now and buy them for like what, like $25?
$25, something like that. Like it is pretty wild, but it's great because it's a time capsule. But it's
my grandparents still have their microwave from like, I don't know, like the 80s or whatever.
It probably works really well.
Yeah, it still works great.
Yeah, apparently those things back in the day, those things are like, they're the legit thing. Like they're tanks. If you still have one and it works, don't get rid of it.
It literally does look like a tank. It's the size of a bus.
Yeah. So I eventually, I made a Christmas one, and there's an 8-hour version of the Christmas one. There's 2 versions of the Christmas one I did. There's a 10-hour version, which is really, really rare now. We are going to be bringing back all these tapes through the Here Lies Facebook page, and also it's going to be on the OSI 74 Networks shop, which is the Roku network that our show Here Lies is a part of.
Which you should check out.
Yes, and I'll go into more of that soon after we stop discussing the tapes. But so they're going to be available. The Halloween ones will be available this fall, and the Christmas ones will be available later. The 10-hour one is very limited, so that's going to be like, there might be like 10 of them available or something.
Okay.
And then there is an 8-hour version of the Christmas tape that is more readily available than the 10-hour one.
Okay.
There's more copies of that. And it's essentially the exact same thing. You're just missing 2 hours worth, which it is what it is. You're still getting an 8-hour tape of Christmas stuff, all cut like as if it's television content from the 80s or 90s. And lots of little cool things. I don't usually tell people what's on them. It's part of a surprise.
Like a surprise. It's worth the surprise. Yeah. Trust me.
And I do fix the audio on them. So there's a lot of old commercials that have like hissing and artifacts and the noise and stuff like that. I'll try to fix that as much as I can. Fixing the picture as well. A lot of stuff sometimes when they're uploaded on YouTube or whatnot, the picture is all out of aspect. So I try to fix that, make everything look like as if like it seamlessly works together, even to the point of sometimes where like there's a bumper for something. Like if it's, I think on one of the Christmas tapes or on the Christmas tape, is what's it called? The Chipmunks one.
Oh, okay.
And I really vividly remember that the bumpers for that are like silent. There's no audio for them. So basically before you go to a commercial break, there's like a little screen capture that shows up of like the logo for the special or whatever. And there's no audio for it. Like there's no music or anything like that. So I'll still put that in. And I've had people mention to me specifically about that. They're like that. Oh man, like I love that kind of, just the fact that it's there because the authenticity, because it's like, like I remember bumpers where there was no music. It would just like randomly, there would be a logo that would show
one like flash card and then it would,
and then you hear the commercials.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, those things are going to be available
on Here Lies.
But we'll announce updates for them on the Here Lies Facebook page.
Nice. So yeah, what's next for Eddie Spuhghetti? Are there more trailers or more content that are you going to put out on your Facebook, or like is that gonna go a bit more, and then maybe tell people where they can get some of these tapes or some of this content if they're looking for it?
Well, all of our main stuff is, obviously we have our updates through our Facebook page, which is Here Lies. If you just look up Here Lies, you should be able to find it. The logo is a gravestone. You can always find me on Facebook though and ask me where to go, and I'll help direct you.
Definitely hit them up.
Yep. And we have a series basically that I host on YouTube, but it's also available on the Roku channel, the Roku network, OSI 74, which is a horror host based network. It's ran by horror host Mr. Lobo.
Yeah,
a very well known horror host in the States and worldwide. And he runs that basically as a hub for all kinds of different hosts, horror or whatnot, etc., including myself. So we do have some episodes on that network, but our most up-to-date stuff is on our YouTube page, which you can find at Here Lies.
Nice.
And basically our show is kind of like a retrospective of old, movies or television series or such. But it's more about looking at the pop culture element to them. And really kind of like analyzing why is this being still recognized, and is it still being recognized for like the right reasons? So for example, like I did a really long video about Risky Business, which is one of my favorite movies.
Really?
Yeah. And I discussed, I don't go into detail about the film. I don't give spoilers or whatever. It's not so much about like the plot of the film. I go into a little bit of it. But it was really a discussion about like, why is that film still recognized as being like an 80s movie? Why is it still like embedded in pop culture, history? And
very recognizable, even if you've never seen the film.
Exactly.
Know quotes from it, the famous scenes from it. You know.
And the most famous scene is the one where he dances in his underwear.
Yeah.
Which is perhaps the worst scene in the film. It does not need to be in the film. It has nothing to do with the movie's tone.
No, yeah.
And that's the best thing about it is like they have this movie that's about like this brooding, like adolescence experience about growing up and like trying to figure out what you want to do with your life and sex and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden it's being represented by like this weird kind of like, he's a go-getter, he's looking to get laid kind of thing, even though the movie has nothing to do with that. And there's all these elements as to why it kind of got coated in a paint of that style, which I go through in detail. It goes from advertising to, just that scene of him dancing becoming a big thing. And, even now there's the huge element of
like so much too. That's the other element, right?
Yeah.
Like that scene's like constantly being parodied or.
Yeah. Oversaturation of just the parodies of it. And then also the fact that Tom Cruise is now a complete nut. So people will kind of disregard the movie a little bit, or they'll look at it in a different light.
Tom Cruise is crazy, but I love his movies, man.
Yeah, he's a legit great actor.
Yeah.
Like, any way you cut it, despite what he believes in and what his religion is or whatever like that. The guy's a really great actor. I've heard nothing but great stories about him from fellow people in the industry.
Yeah, me too. Like that's all you hear is like he couldn't be nicer. He remembers everybody's name. Like
So, and it could be that he's trying to keep up appearances, or it could be that he's just generally a nice guy.
Could be a nice guy. He actually lived here in Ottawa at one point.
That's true.
Yeah. So humble beginnings.
Yeah.
So yeah, if people want to check you out online, follow you on the Instagram or Facebook, they can check out Eddie Spuhghetti on Instagram and Facebook, correct?
Yes. So you can follow me on there. For Here Lies, I believe the Facebook page is Here Lies Official. So if you look up Here Lies Official, or just generally you look up Here Lies, you'll be able to find it. And the YouTube page, again, it should be Here Lies Official. But again, if you just look up Here Lies, you'll be able to find it. And you can find the Hopper PI video on there. You can find my Glow video on there. You can find, again, the retrospective pop culture videos that we do. I'm actually doing one right now. It's going to be about Mac and me. So probably by the time that this podcast is out, it'll probably be out.
Video.
But I'm going to be talking about why Mac and me is still kind of like acknowledged, and mainly it's because of Paul Rudd and the many times he's been on Conan O'Brien's show
and put that clip on.
But it's also really fascinating for me because I kind of looked at it from the perspective of why is that movie much more relevant now than E.T. is.
It's funny. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, people know that. Well, a lot of people know that reference, anyways.
Yeah, a lot of people know that reference, but
Mystery
it's like
Science did it too. And
oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's kind of like if you go to a party and you talk to somebody, you bring up like E.T. and then bring up Mac and Me. Like I feel like more people would talk about Mac and Me.
They will definitely know that scene from Mac and Me.
yeah, they'll know that scene if you bring up the scene. And then it's also too like for the people who've watched the movie itself though as well.
Movie.
It's not a really good film. Like it really just kind of hits the beats and tones of E.T. over time throughout the film's progress. But the really big element about it is the McDonald's involvement, which for me is like the reason why I can watch it and be like, I get this. Kind of. I can enjoy it on a much different level than just being like an E.T. ripoff. Because of this, McDonald's is like such a big behemoth of pop culture for our generation and generations before. And
even talking about it, I want McDonald's now.
I know. Yeah.
On the podcast, we talk about Burger King a lot for some. Matt likes Burger King, so this is competing things. The King and the Mac.
Well, in the States, we have the Impossible Whopper now, so I wonder when we're gonna get it here in Canada.
Oh, McDonald's is gonna make their own veggie thing, I think.
I hope so. That's the smart thing they should do.
But really and truly though, didn't McDonald's kind of already have artificial burgers before this?
They had one
telling you that it's technically meat, but it's like,
oh, I forget what it was called, but it was a piece of shit. It apparently just tasted like garbage. It was called like the McLean or like I can't remember what it was called, but it was something like that where it was like it was still meat, but it was like a diet version of their hamburger. Just failed.
Grody. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. Maybe next time we can have you on. We can watch a beta, and we can do a commentary to an old beta tape or an old VHS tape that people might have. But yeah, appreciate you coming on the show, and we'll have you on again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at Lost Commentary, on Instagram at Raiders of the Lost Commentary, and like us on Facebook.
I'll be back.